Alright, I'm back from my little break. I hope everyone is still staying safe. And I don't have any disclaimers or anything for this one, so let's just go right into episode 7. This one is gonna be a long one again, so let's start. The first thing I want to talk about in this episode actually happens before the first clip. So there's a text conversation between Jonas and Matteo after Matteo comes out to him at the end of the last episode. And it's basically just Jonas saying, like, I love you, man. Thank you for coming to me and talking to me. And it's just so sweet. And this is another example, I think, of Druck using the text messages, using the social media to their advantage, and really making it feel like these characters and their stories exist even outside of the clips. Their supplementary material is so good. In some parts, I feel like it even should have been like part of the clips. I think I might get into something like that in the next episode, but it's so good. It really is. Your experience is so much better when you watch it like with all of the social media stuff. And I think this could be a cool parallel back to when Matteo texted Jonas after episode 3, clip 2. It's after he says like that homophobic comment, and then he's just like kind of stumbling over his words, and Jonas is like, what the fuck? Like, what's happening? After that, Matteo texts him and he's like, yeah, I'm sorry, dude. Like, I didn't mean any of that. That was dumb. And I like that there is that consistent communication between them, and it really shows that they really just care about each other so much. They just love each other so much, and they feel the need to reciprocate that love and make sure that they're being clear about when they need to apologize and when they need to be there for one another, and they're doing that. They both do that. So now actually getting into the clip itself. Matteo is fiddling with that little, I don't know what it is. I really don't. I think it has something to do with sports. I don't know, but he's like playing with it mindlessly and just like staring, like glaring at the drawing on the wall. And he's like close to tears. But before we get into any more action, I want to talk about this song. It's called Can't Get Over You by Joji and the Clams Casino. Hope I said that right. The lyrics that I think are important are pretty simple. They're just, I can't get over you, can't get over you, and before I die, I pray that I could be the one. So I read all the lyrics to this song, and it's basically about falling in love really fast and then also getting like very consumed by that love. It's a pretty dark song, actually. Like, it talks about like intense feelings of jealousy, and you know, it even mentions like before I die. Like, it's very intense, but it sounds like cute, right? It has that dark tone, but it's completely juxtaposed by the production and how upbeat it sounds. And I think that could be really cool when you think about how Matteo is kind of feeling the same way. When he looks at that drawing, he's reminded not only of like the good times and the happy upbeat stuff, he's also reminded of the fact that he got rejected and he still doesn't know why, and everything's really confusing. And there's so many like conflicting emotions and juxtaposing emotions. And I really like how the music and how it sounds and the lyrics parallel what's going through Matteo's mind right now. Matteo is trying to like juggle all of those happy memories with all of the shitty memories too. And I think there's also that dissonance between reality and fantasy. I mentioned reality and fantasy so much in episode 5. And I think I'm going to keep mentioning it in this one too, because I do think it comes back. I think David's drawings are him reiterating that he still wants that fantasy. He's still in that fantasy. The drawings are all about like eternity and like running away, like all these romantic things or romanticized ideas in David's mind. And that's because David doesn't think he can have love in reality. He's convinced himself that the only way he can experience any kind of love and connection is through fantasy, is through things that just aren't completely real, which is really sad. The only way that he knows how to cope with this is by like making these drawings. And I think what Matteo does, like standing up and just like ripping the drawing off the wall, I think that is both him like trying to just kind of throw away all of those conflicting emotions that he's feeling. But I think it's also a way for him to kind of privately denounce that fantasy. He said, no, David, not only in eternity, maybe in eternity. No, like stop. It's torture. It is. This entire episode is going to be Mateo taking control of his life and building bridges to people and fixing his relationships. I think by doing that and by being active, he is also stepping into his own reality, a reality that he has carved for himself, a reality that he is taking an active part in. So he doesn't want that fantasy with David. He doesn't. And I think in this episode, this is the first time we see it. In the very first clip, we know Mateo, he's not about that fantasy. And because he rips the drawing off the wall, he's pretty much deciding that he's just gonna focus on his other relationships for the rest of the episode. This one, he doesn't know what the fuck's going on. David obviously is still in love with this fantasy, whereas Mateo is very much wanting to be in reality and be an active part of that reality. So he's just like, you know what? No. I'm not going to think about those. I'm going to focus on my other relationships that I know I can fix. And that's pretty much what the majority of this episode is. I'm going to say it right now. Anytime I mention bridges and reality, stay hydrated. Wash your hands. I don't know. Put some lip balm on. Something good, because it's probably going to happen a lot. I love how he takes a second to just process what Hannah's gift means. Like, you can literally see him pause and take a moment to just let it sink in that someone is there for him and that someone is offering him support. Unlike in the last episode, he's actually willing to accept that support. Mateo is finally starting to realize that he has people around him who love him and want to be there for him. This is a realization that is going to continue throughout the end of the season. He's going to keep realizing, oh shit, there are people around me that actually give a shit and want to make sure that I'm okay. And I'm in a place where I can actually accept that help. Instead of immediately brushing it off like he has in the past, specifically the last episode, he actually lets it sink in and internalize. And everyone has said this already, but I do think it's perfect timing that this episode happens around Easter. I think this clip in particular is on Easter, and then the rest is just like a couple days after. And even if you're not religious, it also coincides with like the beginning of spring, so there's just that feeling of like new beginnings and rebirth all around you, whether it's in a spiritual sense or just like in a natural sense, or both. So I really, really love that. I think that was great timing. So this entire episode is Mateo building bridges and fixing relationships. But the one bridge that he like actively avoids building is the one with his mom. It's the one that he just can't really do yet, which I really like. It's realistic, you know, he has the most history, obviously, with his mom, and there's a lot between them. There's a lot of depth and weight there. So it makes sense that although he can apologize to Hans and to Amira and Sarah and to himself, he's still not ready to do that with his mom yet. I don't know why that line kind of bothers me. I don't really love it. I don't really love it. It kind of seems a little bit out of character. To me, it seems more like an Izak line. I went back and watched this scene in the OG, and I was actually surprised that Izak didn't say that. The look on his face pretty much said it, but he didn't say it. So I was surprised that Mateo did. And I know that like the running theory, which I totally believe, is that Hans doesn't need an apology, which you can see that he doesn't, because he immediately is like, it's fine, like, I don't need your apology. I don't. So I get that, like he doesn't want one. He would much rather feel valued as a person and feel looked up to and trusted which Mateo shows that he does look up to Hans by saying, hey, actually, I need some advice. I wasn't going to apologize, but I do need advice. And that's really what Hans wants. That is really the way to build a bridge between them. So I get that. I don't know why. I don't like it. It's harsh. It sounds harsh. Okay, it doesn't sound harsh, and he doesn't look harsh when he says it, which I think is all because of Michelangelo. But just the wording of it, I don't know. There's no point. There's no point. It doesn't matter. It's fine. The important thing is that Mateo knows what to do here. He knows how to build that bridge, and he knows that it's not by apologizing. It's by confiding in Hans. Especially about stuff that has to do with his sexuality. I also think this entire episode has an air of warmth throughout it. Like, you can really see it with Hans's outfit right now. And like the light that's on Mateo's face, it's red. And he's cooking, so there's like that feeling of home. I think pretty much in every clip, there are colors that symbolize warmth. And there are settings that symbolize warmth, like the church that they're going to go to. In the next clip, there's like a really cozy cafe and they're drinking warm drinks. I don't know, like there's a lot of light also in like clips 3 and 4. There's a lot of lens flares. That was just something that I noticed that I wanted to get in somewhere. That there is a lot of warmth in this episode, and it's shown a lot in the visuals. And I don't think that's on accident. I think this episode really is about warmth and about connecting to people. And they really wanted to emulate that feeling of how it feels to connect to people and to feel at home with people. And I think they did it really well. Once again, Druck just coming in hot with the coloring, the really subtle aspects of the filmmaking. I know everyone loves Dutch Scum because it's very obvious with the cinematography and how aesthetically pleasing it is. But I don't know, that's just not my thing. I much prefer this, that is more subtle and doesn't call attention to how pretty it is and is less perfect. I really, really love the fact that they go to a church to have this conversation. Or more specifically, Hans brings Mateo along with him to church because it seems like Hans was already going to go. So he was like, might as well bring Mateo along because he wants to talk, he wants to confide in me, so whatever. I think it's a perfect setting. And say what you will about religion, I am not religious myself, but in theory, I feel like most, if not all, religions really stress the importance of forgiveness and understanding other people and empathy. In practice, I don't know if that's how it works, but in theory, it should be, right? And I feel like it sets up the rest of the episode so perfectly to center this on forgiveness and trying to understand people. Because first, Hans has forgiven Mateo and their relationship is blossoming once again because Mateo is confiding in Hans and making him feel wanted and valued as a support system, right? So that's one element of forgiveness here. And then an element of trying to understand someone is that Mateo is literally trying to understand David right now. He's trying to get a new perspective on the situation because his perspective isn't working for him, okay? He's confused, he's angry, he's sad about it, so he's like, you know what? Let's try to get someone else's opinion on it. I need to try to understand this person. And then another element that kind of connects both forgiveness and that empathy is at the end of this clip, we see that Mateo still isn't really ready to build that bridge to his mom, but he is starting to muster up that courage. He's starting to find it within himself to forgive her for a lot, probably, and also just trying to understand her as a person. So I really, really love that. There's so many levels of forgiveness and empathy, not only in this clip, but just in the entire episode. So I think it's really perfect that they go to a church to have this first conversation of the episode. And it also deepens Hans' character as well, because we learn more about his beliefs and how complex they are. I do feel like some of the Eskilds can come off as a bit stereotypical. Like, he's the gay roommate who is energetic and extroverted and loves to party, but also gives really good advice and doesn't take shit. It's a little bit of a stereotype, and I really like that, unlike Eskild from the original, we actually know things about Hans. We know about his family life from season 2. We know about his beliefs from this clip, or at least partially. They really did a good job in not making Hans one note, I think. Still love Eskild, don't get me wrong. And I do think he still is layered, but not as much as Hans is. You are in... you are going to the 17th layer of hell, sir. And through learning about Hans's relationship with religion, we also learn a little bit about Matteo's complicated relationship with religion as well, which is connected again to his mother. I love that line. It's absolutely not a very sympathetic thing to say. Like, saying that anyone with a mental illness is crazy or that they've gone nuts. Not a great thing to say. But I think it is important, and I want to keep reiterating the fact that Matteo never sounds or looks malicious or angry whenever he talks about his mother. You know, when he said in episode 5 that she's just a lot, or that she's just difficult. Things aren't easy with her.
Meine Mutter ist alles. Sie ist halt nicht so einfach.
He didn't say it in like a frustrated way. He didn't focus on the fact that he had to get out of there. He just sounded sad. He really did. And I think it's the same thing here. I think he just sounds and looks sad. And I think saying, oh, sadly, she's gone nuts now, is a way of him trying to make light of it. I think we've seen him do this before in the last episode when he was with Hannah. And he was just like, well, I'm really just an asshole. And he said that like right after he was about to cry. And it was a way of him trying to bring humor into a really dark situation. And I think this is the same thing. You can see on his face that he looks just defeated and the entire situation is just shit. So by saying that and not looking or seeming angry about it at all, just really sad, he's just trying to make the best out of it. And this is the only way he knows how to cope with it. I think making light of his shitty situations is just a coping mechanism for him. The entire air of the conversation changes there, with Matteo just like kind of staring into space and losing focus as he probably just thinks about everything with his mom. And once again, he doesn't look angry, just sad. Like there's just like a deep sadness there. And then Hans offers to light a candle for her. And it takes a second. It takes a second for Matteo to actually accept that support and go and light the candle with Hans. This is my favorite theme that I think runs throughout every single clip in this episode. As Matteo builds one bridge, other bridges have the potential to be built from that first one, if that makes sense. Like by building one bridge, there is now opportunities for new ones. And in this clip, I think it's twofold. I think not only does Matteo building his bridge to Hans help him start to muster up the courage to do something about his mom, it also helps him understand David a little bit better, which is the beginning of that bridge being built. So I really love how everything just kind of exponentially grows as this episode goes on. And we're going to see it literally in every single clip. I was so excited to see that it actually is in every clip. And with every relationship that Matteo grows and builds upon, more keep building in response. I don't know. I really love it. This episode is just so nice and lovely. So the next bridge that Matteo wants to build is to Amira. So he shows up early to their little study date. He does prep work beforehand. He buys her like a hot chocolate coffee thing. I don't know what it is. And I think it's really nice how he shows his forgiveness through actions rather than words. A theme throughout this entire clip is that it's very implicit. A lot of the stuff that they're saying actually has like double meaning. There's so much writing under the surface of everything that they're saying to each other in this clip, and I really, really love it. I love how indirect but still effective this apology is. And I think it is important that he shows it through actions rather than words, because that was what he lacked in previous times. You know, he had the words. He said, no, it's fine, like, I'm good, like, whatever, I'm listening, whatever. But he never was. He was lacking in that action before. But now, the words aren't important. He knows that. The actions is really, really what's important, specifically for his beef with Amira. Every bridge that Mateo builds happens in a slightly different way, and it's all catered specifically to that person that he's trying to connect with. And I think for Amira, this is perfect. She doesn't want words, kind of just like how Hans didn't want words. Still in a little bit of a different way and for a different reason, but Amira doesn't want words right now. She wants action. She wants to know that her study buddy isn't like a complete asshole. And he isn't. He's actually trying. He put the work in, and that's what's important in this case. And I like that. You can see the care that he's putting into each of these apologies. I'm going to talk about that clownery, I think in the next clip, but it's clownery, that's for sure. So this entire thing is Amira saying, I know, and I'm going to be respectful about it, but I know, and I support you. And I think this is showing once again that by building one bridge, you get the opportunities for even more connections. And in this case, Mateo reaching out to Amira and showing that he wants to be better for her and that he actually is doing better and working harder. Amira is able to reciprocate. She builds a bridge right back to him, and she kind of implicitly is apologizing for what she said before in episode 4 and how harsh she was. And she's showing her support. And I really love the balance of both of them apologizing and building their bridges without saying the exact words. Mateo's is literally like with no words, he just actions. But Amira's is like, here are the words, but here's like the words. Here's the subtext. The subtext is what's important. And Mateo knows that thank you is not thank you for telling me that information about how homosexuality is inherited epigenetically. That's not what the thank you is. The thank you is, thank you for giving me a second chance, Amira. Thank you for still believing in me and for still supporting me even after I was a piece of shit. Even after I was a horrible study buddy to you. And I think there's a couple of layers of the subtext here about him specifically asking about Islam and what it says about homosexuality. I think in one level he's asking implicitly, once again, Amira, like, are you compromising your beliefs to support me? And then I think another level is just religion in general. He's trying to get a feel for what this one religion says about homosexuality. So maybe he can try to understand what his mom is thinking and where his mom's head is at in regards to religion and homosexuality in general. Oh. I mentioned the food symbolism, I think all the way back in like episode 2, maybe? I don't even know. I really don't know. It was one of the really early episodes. I'm pretty sure it was episode 2. And I linked to a big like master post on Tumblr about what food means in this season and how it really does symbolize like comfort and support. And I love how they both exchange food in this clip. And I think it works as further symbolism of their reciprocal and implicit apology to one another. Before the clip even starts, we see that Mateo has bought Amira a drink. And then the clip ends in perfect symmetry with Amira sharing not just food, but homemade food with Mateo, which is just even more special. So I love that symbolism. And I do think it is like throughout the season. I haven't really been talking about it because there's just so many other things to talk about. And there is like the big long Tumblr post about it that explains it really well. So I'll link it again in the description here. So that's all I'm going to talk about for this part. I will see y'all on Saturday to finish up the episode. Thank you so much for watching.